Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to 80s TV Ladies. We look back at female-driven television shows from the 1980s and celebrate the people who made them. Here are your hosts, Sharon Johnson and Susan Lambert-Haddam.
Thank you so much for joining us at 80s TV Ladies for this amazing interview with Marcia Ross. You're really going to love the second half of our in-depth interview.
And it's so special to have her here in person in our little studio. I'm so excited to have our first casting director on our show. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So, any particular reason why at that time you weren't involved in the episodic casting and just casting for the pilot?
Sure, because at that time, the movie for television business was a very big business. It was a really big business. And we worked a lot in movies for television. That's when we mostly made our living. And then maybe we'd do one, possibly two pilots every year. So we didn't want to do episodes because that's very time consuming. And you can't, well, in those days, you can't do a lot of other things if you're casting episodes. And so Judith never really wanted to do them because she felt like we didn't really need to do them for financial purposes. So this was just something we missed in the contract. So, we did it. Judith and I did it. And it was challenging, but I'm glad I did it.
Was that the only time you were doing the episodic casting, or did
No, later on, well, when I was at Warner Brothers, I was overseeing other people casting episodic. When I went in my own business, and that's an interesting thing, because when I left Disney, the business had changed outside. Really, it had changed so much from when I went into Disney. There was not a lot of big feature films going on, not enough that every casting director could have enough films. I mean, you've got like the best, most incredible, talented casting directors in the business, and they all do pilots. They do television stuff. I mean, a lot of their movies are on TV. There are not enough big features anymore to support the casting directors where you'd get so much money to cast a feature the way there used to be. So all the great casting directors do everything now. They all do everything. Maybe not all episodic, but they all do television because they do Netflix and they do Amazon and, HBO and stuff like that. So you had that, and then you had this independent world, which I thought I would be very interested in because, I could do something interesting and different. But the independent world was also, and I don't mean independent casting, I mean small independent films. Yeah. That became like, these months trying to attach leads to things so that you could get financing. I mean, it was exhausting, and I don't really like letting people down. That was something. And so after a while, I just didn't really want to do it anymore because you try to get them people. They didn't have money. They needed to get money. They needed the names. It was very hard to attach people. If you couldn't make an offer, then it's hard. You don't want to disappoint people. So I actually did a couple series. I did a Rob Schneider show at CBS, Rob, with the Latin family. And then I did Of Kings and Prophets for ABC because I did the pilot and I stayed on.
Yeah. And then did you do just the pilot, or at least the first season for Models, Inc.?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I did. So there was an executive that I worked with at Warner's who'd left, and he'd gone to work for Aaron to be his head of, production. And he asked me to cast that show. Judith and I actually many years ago had done a pilot for Aaron Spelling called Maserati and the Brain. Peter Billingsley, he's a producer now. Or maybe his brother, the Christmas Story person. I don't know, he had a brother who was an actor. I can't remember. But anyway, it was called Maserati and the Brain. Lynn Loring was running. I don't remember meeting Aaron at that time. But Larry asked me to do the show. I didn't think I was going to do the episodes. I hadn't planned on it. But I love the guys that were my producers. They were just wonderful, fantastic people. And it was one of their birthdays, I remember. And they really wanted me to stay. And I said, okay, it's your birthday, I'll stay. So I did a whole bunch of the first episodes. Yeah, so I did that show. I was thinking about it because I saw that you wanted to talk about that. I think I saw like 1,000 girls for that show.
I was going to say, that is a cast of very amazing women. Carrie-Anne Moss,
well, yeah. And it's really interesting because I read so many women. And I also knew if you watch Aaron's shows, he liked a certain kind of actress. So I was trying to put together a cast of people that were believable as models, but believable as actors, and also believable as people Aaron would like. That was the challenge. So this is a story I love to tell. So Aaron was the nicest person. Aaron had this huge office. over by the museum on Wilshire, the LA County Museum. And he had this office, it was this very big office, and he had this desk there. And then there's this big round couch. It was, I think, probably leather or something, but big couch. And the room was like filled with people. When you'd come, it wasn't just Aaron, this person, and Tony Sepulveda, and there might have been like 8 people or more sitting in there, and the producers of the show. You'd walk in, it was for actors, intimidating. But Aaron was so polite, and he had this butler guy, and every day, you'd go in, and there was a certain time, and he would bring you like, what would you like to drink? And they'd serve cookies. It was really something. And he was so lovely to all the actors. But I read Angelina Jolie, and I just felt, she's the star.
Yeah.
So I called her back. But before she came in, because I just remember it so vividly, I remember I had this chair, and what I used to do is like at the end of the session, I'd get the chair and I'd face them and talk to them about, the people they'd seen. So I sat in the chair and I said, look, I'm going to bring somebody in. And Aaron, here's the thing. I know that she's not probably the type of actress that you're looking for the show, but I would be remiss if I did not bring her in because I just think that this girl has real something. So I bring her in, and she reads, and of course she's fabulous, and she leaves, and they close the door, and of course they loved her. But he says, well, you're right, Marcia, she's a star, but she's not right for the show. So that's my Angelina Jolie story. But Carrie-Anne Moss, who's a wonderful actress, you see, that's a surprise. Like, you can't know when you do a show like that, which person, particularly because Carrie-Anne, at that time, she wasn't quite as modelly looking as all the others. So we did some hair and makeup tests and stuff, and we cast her. And yet she became like the breakthrough person.
Yeah. Well, so why was Angelina Jolie not right?
Because she didn't look like a SoCal,
She wasn't a particular kind of look.
Yeah, she's exotic looking, which is, of course, a lot of her appeal. But for this show, she exuded more than it could be sustained in a situation like this. I mean, she's a movie star and she was supposed to be one.
Yeah.
She's so compelling. She's so incredible. You meet her in a room and she just, you knew. Wow. She was young. She was probably like 19 at the time.
Now, so Linda Gray sort of headed up that cast.
Yes.
Now, when you're casting something like that, do you like go, okay, once we lock in Linda Gray, then we fill it out?
Yeah, she'd worked with Aaron, I think, before. So yeah, that's what we did. I had to cast everything else.
Yeah. Our own Melissa worked on Models Inc.
What did you do?
I did. I was a very young camera assistant.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was my first union show.
Frank and Chuck were the guys. That's it. Charles and the two, Frank South. Frank South.
Yes, the producers.
Yeah, they were the nicest people.
Yes. Yes, I had a great time on that show. I was very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
After I left Warner Brothers, I was on my own business for, a year and a half. So that was one of the things I cast in that year and a half. I did another show too. I did this pilot called Robin's Hoods.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it ever went to series, but I did the pilot also for that.
But somebody interesting was in that one.
I don't know anything about it,
okay,
except that I did it. But
there would have been a reason I would know that because it must have had somebody I was a fan of.
It was a lovely group of people.
It was.
I was very proud. I tell you something. I remember having all the pictures up on my wall. Some of them like David Goldsmith and, Kylie or whatever was from Australia.
Kylie, yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
And you cast Garcelle Bouvet.
I did cast, yes. It was like the second or third episode and I cast Garcelle. I remember looking at all the pictures. I think I have a photo at home of my wall with all the pictures on my wall. I had an office up at Spelling. It was just like, to me, what I love. All new people that you'd never seen before. It was so exciting.
Yeah. I came down to visit you.
Yes.
And Herb. And it was really lovely, the DP. And it was a lovely set to visit.
We just had so much fun. I later learned we were a really good crew. We were a feature film crew working on television. Yeah,
I mean, the show looked great.
It did. When I was hired, it was 9 episodes, and then they just kept adding and adding, but it did not go on.
Too long, yeah. Mm-mm. And a lot of those people, I don't know. Cassidy got married and left the business.
That wasn't surprising.
Yeah. And then I think David Goldsmith got out of the business. I don't remember all of them, but Carrie-Anne's done incredibly well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was great to work with.
Yeah, she's a lovely woman.
Whip smart.
Yeah. Canadian.
Yeah, those Canadians, man. You're credited with discovering or at least introducing a lot of young talent.
Yes.
Right? Like Clueless. Who were your favorite finds?
Oh, wow. Well, when you say it that way, really, it's only because I actually cast them in something that brought them to attention. Because honestly, like usually they had like an agent or a manager and maybe one small credit. So, I mean, honestly, yes, was I there advocating for them? And it's a big word in casting. The casting director is going to be your best friend. Mm-hmm. I mean, if a casting director likes you, even if you don't get this, they don't forget you. But all these people had people who found them somewhere who were agents and managers. But the casting director is the person that really like advocates for them and puts them in front. So I think, I had met Paul Rudd. I was doing a television movie when I was in my own business. Connie Selica was the lead, I think. Gosh, Connie Selica. This is MOW. And I had this part of a young guy who worked at this newspaper. I guess she was some sort of investigative journalist. It's a long time ago. I can't even believe I can remember this. But I ended up reading tons of people, all these young guys. And Paul was where I met Paul. Also, it's where I met Brecken. And what's interesting, too, was that when I went to meet Amy Heckerling to interview for the job, I put together this presentation for these roles. Alicia was already attached. I did not cast her. She came with that because she had been attached at Fox. Because it was at Fox, and then Scott Rudin kind of took it over to Paramount and cut the budget and a lot of other things. So I had met all these young guys. I mean, I brought in the person that tested with Brecken was Jeremy Renner. And the person that tested with Donald was Terrence Howard. There was a lot of people. And Paul went through a huge casting process. It was a big process for him, but he's a real trooper, boy. And he is such a major talent. He's really talented. Of course, Heath Ledger, people talk about that. Anne Hathaway. I think one of my favorite, though, obviously Anne, which is a funny story. I was mentioning.
This is for the Princess Diaries.
Yeah, which is funny. I had seen Anne because my friend, Mala Lapata, who is a very old cast, she's retired. She's an old casting friend of mine who cast Remington Steele. She had cast this pilot for Fox. And she said, we cast this girl. She hadn't met her. She came from New York. They'd seen her on tape. Next time you go to New York, Marcia, and do some generals, you should meet her. I don't know, man, Anne must have been like 16, 15 at the time. She was young. And I did a general with her in New York. And then when the movie happened, she had actually done the pilot. The show lasted 2 or 3 episodes. But I didn't forget her. And I just thought, this girl, there's something. And we were trying to get her in, and her manager didn't want her going on tape. And finally, she was coming through LA and on her way to do another film that she'd booked. I got her in to read for Gary. And then we screen tested her, and I put together this whole book of pictures of her dressed up, dressed down. Because the thing I knew about Anne was that she could be real, but you could turn her into Audrey Hepburn or, this beautiful princess, because that was the key to casting the role. You had to believe that they could be both. It's interesting because Mandy Moore had also tested for that part. And I don't know how I knew that she had the singing career, but I was a big advocate for wow, let's just find a role for Mandy Moore. Let's find a role for Mandy Moore. We should have her in the movie. I loved working with Gary Marshall. Gary Marshall also was a person who knew actors. He knew when they walked in, whether they could do it or not. He liked them. He did not torture you and say, more, I want to see more. He didn't do that. If the person was great, he knew it and he saw it. He said, okay, let's put a pin in that one, and let's see what we can do. But really the Chris Pine story in the Princess Diaries too. So we were casting that role and we had some people lined up to test. I don't know that I felt that we really, really had it. We had a couple good choices. One, I think, could have done it, but I wasn't 100% there with it. And Ro Diamond, who's a wonderful agent, calls me one day and she says, I have this client. His name is Chris Pine. We grew up in LA. His father was the actor Robert Pine. He's been doing theater. He did an episode of something, but he's going to go back to New York. He wants to go back to New York and go do more theater and some other things. But would you just see him? Because she wanted him to have the audition. I said, sure. He read for me. It was like, okay, can you come back for Gary this afternoon? So he did. And then we screen tested him with Anne, and I remember with Nina Jacobson sitting there with him, sitting with Nina and the other executives in the screening room watching Chris Pine with Anne in the screen test. Oh, a little Robert Redford, a little Brad Pitt, there was something. And even though he really didn't have done anything at that point, except one episode in some theater, and I really appreciate working for these people at that time because they said yes. Many people would not have said yes. They would have said, go out and find a name. But they didn't. They said yes. So I was very fortunate.
And so when you do sequels, are you like on board contractually?
No.
Or it's just because
I was
that worked
there.
out?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do it again. Well, I guess you were at Disney.
I didn't work on the Enchanted sequel.
How do you approach the casting for a sequel? Do you approach it differently? Are you like, I got to bring somebody new?
Well, no, it's script dependent. I mean, mostly how you approach a sequel is that if the last movie's been so successful that you're making a sequel, then the options that you have on people that were pre-negotiated when they made their first deal, that's a problem because everybody wants more money and doesn't want to do it for the options. So that really becomes, how do you get everybody back? If the person has become very successful as a result of the film.
So the options in the contract aren't cast in stone insofar as if we're going to do another one, then you have to do it kind of thing?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I don't know what's happening now there, but what it used to be, if you had no real credits and you were a first timer, then you would do the picture and then you would do two options. Sometimes because they thought down the road there'd be a sequel or they wanted to have some person, for future casting. So they would pre-negotiate them when the people had no credits, and before success. So it became,
There's a big difference between Anne Hathaway before Princess Diaries.
That's right.
And Anne Hathaway after Princess Diaries.
And so you have to work those things out. Same thing with Julie Andrews. Well, I don't think we had options with Julie Andrews. So that's the other thing. When you have certain people who were in the one, but you didn't take options. And this is true with all sequels. Yeah. Okay. All sequels. It's not just this movie. All of a sudden, now you really want those people to come back because you need them for the sequel. And now it's like, you're starting from ground one with the negotiations.
That's crazy. So speaking of Julie Andrews, that was a huge get, it felt like.
Yeah, she's the nicest person. The nicest person.
And so when you're like, it would be great. It would be great in this role.
Well, you have a list, and there's not too many people on the list.
No. Because you got to play the queen.
We were very lucky. I mean, you got to hand it to Gary. I'm sure, Gary could pick up the phone and call. I mean, Gary Marshall had a lot of relationships.
He was delightful. I was on set for Princess Diaries because we did a lot on that for digital because it was a young people's game. But it was super fun to work on that movie because everyone was so nice.
That's Gary.
With. Yeah.
Gary sets the tone.
Yeah. He was really lovely, as was Anne Hathaway.
Yes, and she's still lovely.
Yeah. As was Julie Andrews, but we didn't do a lot with Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews was very nice and very approachable.
This has been amazing. Who would you call in anytime you had a chance?
Oh, Anne, Rachel McAdams, Chris, Paul Rudd. I'd work with Jeff Bridges. Oh my God, I love Jeff Bridges. It was the greatest thing when I got to cast Jeff Bridges. Oh, it was like a dream come true. Nice. Oh my God, unbelievably nice person.
It's so nice.
It's nice to hear.
It's so nice to hear.
We all love Jeff Bridges.
He's amazing. I did this movie called Stick It about high school gymnastics.
Yes.
And Jeff Bridges was the big star lead of the thing. And I've had a crush on Jeff Bridges for years. I just love Jeff Bridges. He's a wonderful actor and just can do anything and just incredible. So Jeff asked me to read somebody he knew up in Santa Barbara where he was living. I think she might have worked at the gym, something, maybe for a small part. And of course, Jeff, not a problem. So she went on tape and I saw it and, she wasn't an actress, but I did, of course. So he wanted to know how she did. And I had to tell him, and it's hard because you're going to tell the star? Well, sorry. But I said, Jeff, I'm sorry, but she's not really very good. He said, okay, now I understand. Do I still have the part? And I said, Jeff, I have waited my entire casting career to have a movie that is with Jeff Bridges. So yeah, you still have the part. And then I went to the set and there he was. Fortunately, an old friend of mine, John Kirby, was working on the film with the girls, working on coaching them in between to help out with the director so she could do other things. And he's standing there, and I'm like, I'm so nervous. Like, I could barely go up and I said, John, could you just introduce me to your Princess? I was like, it was so incredible to meet him. And I subsequently spent some time with him when we did Tron, and we were in London together because I was working on another film with the same director. But some of these people are really nice, and he's one of them.
That's so great to hear. That's our favorite.
Indeed.
All right, real quick, Romy and Michelle's high school reunion.
Yes.
Because that came out of nowhere, it felt like, at the time. And those actresses.
Well, that was a play that had been done here. Robin wrote a play. We did a table reading of it, and Lisa Kudrow was in the play, and Janine Garofalo was the other role. But at the time, we were going to make it into a film. It was like, Lisa had just started Friends, so at least she had some spin for them. But there was concern that we loved Janine, but just two people that really no one knows. And then we did cast Janine in another role because we loved Janine and we wanted her to be in the movie. And then there was this thing about casting other parts. It was really hard to do. I mean, we got a lot of passes. And then we got to Mira Sorvino. And I guess at that time, I'm not making the story up because it has been told before, but she was dating Quentin Tarantino at the time and he liked the script. So she was doing another film in New York, and I actually flew to New York with the director and the producer to meet with Mira because the studio wanted me to go. And she then agreed to do the film, which was great because I think that really made the difference. But some of my really favorite stories there was I'd gone to London like every 18 months, and I'd go to the theater every night, and I'd meet a lot of actors, and one of the people I met was Alan Cumming. I met him in London, and I just loved him. And then I saw him in a couple of movies, and he was so different. And so when he got to LA, I said, listen, I'm going to give you the script because I've got this project coming up. And I think that because I needed an actor for the part he played that could do a lot of different things and be believable. And he had that range. And that's how Alan Cumming. And then we had the cowboy part at the end, and we still hadn't cast it. And then I got this tape, and it was Justin Theroux. Was the cowboy. But he had done, nobody knew. The other thing is they had just been on Saturday Night, but, Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan, they were cast in the movie too. They were waiters. They're not in the movie because it was.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But they were waiters at the high school reunion,
Oh my God. That's amazing.
So,
Now, did you do the Chris Kattan movie at Disney?
No, I did not.
Okay. I work on that.
Yeah. I did not.
It was actually kind of fun. That song stuck in my head for a long time.
I did not. I worked on it as an executive.
Okay.
Because when you're an executive, you're not picking and choosing. You know. And so I took the thing about as an executive, they're all my kids. And frankly, I just had to find something about everything that I liked that made me care. I love this director. I love this producer. Will the script's great? Will this, something. And they're all my kids, and I got to love them all. And I feel I was very responsible for the work that we needed to do and do it well.
I got to tell you, I think I lucked out in being at Disney Theatrical at the time that I was, because it was a lot of amazing movies. Mm-hmm. Coming off what may not have been the best Disney time, it then hit this stride from Sixth Sense to Pirates.
Yeah, I worked on all those films.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
It was probably shortly after that they stopped doing so many movies and they were going to more of this
franchise.
Yeah.
I was in a lot of meetings about the franchise model that was coming.
Well, because they also, they started buying these companies to get that, the story with Johnny Depp was really to Dick's credit. Jerry really wanted to do a movie with Johnny, and we were trying to get him to commit. And so Dick sat down with him because, Jerry was, by the way, fantastic producer. I'm sure you worked with Jerry. Talk about knowing how to promote your own movie. I mean, or how to cast your movie. Jerry was amazing and great taste in actors. So Johnny went up to meet with Dick. This idea of doing a movie based on the ride had been sort of floating around for some time. And Dick said, well, how would you feel about this movie too? And that's how he ended up in that movie. And then I remember being on the set of Alice in Wonderland because I went to actually visit Anne. You talked about going on sets. I went to see Anne, and Johnny was there. And I remember chatting with him because I had just seen on Hollywood Boulevard, all these people now in front of Grauman's, like
being Jack Sparrow.
Yeah,
yes.
And I said, Shani, I said, have you ever gone out there, maybe in your costume and gone up to one of these people? Because it's all these people dressed up as him. It was crazy. I'll tell you one last casting story. So,
Break time. We'll be back soon.
Welcome back. If you don't want to listen to those ads anymore, go on over to patreon.com/80stevladies and you can get them ad-free.
Let's continue with our conversation.
we worked on Enchanted for many years. There were many, many incarnations of Enchanted with different directors before it finally got made, with Amy.
Yeah.
And I had seen Keira Knightley on a Robin Hood's Daughter, a television movie, I think on ABC or something, I don't know. And right away, you could tell. We were trying to make a version of it at this point, and we wanted a screen tester. And her parents were like, she was like 15 or 16, and no, we're not going to do options. So that went away. But when we started casting Pirates, and Rana Cresta, who cast the film, who did a fantastic job, I said, just look at this movie. You can never know unless we have to watch everything. It doesn't mean I really cast her, but at least I'd seen her in something and could tell right then, like, we should keep this person in mind for things. So when it got to the point where they were actually thinking about actually testing her, and Jerry liked her, and Garth Drabinsky liked her, at least I could say to my bosses at the time, I know who she is. I think she's great too. I wouldn't take credit for that, but what I could do was stand behind the decision and support them because I knew that the person was good.
To that end, did you keep a list or just sort of a mental list in terms of people that you saw? Just kept it all in your head?
Lots of it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
very
interesting.
impressive. Okay, so let's talk about people you loved in the 80s.
I mean, can we just talk about Jean Smart?
Yes, we can, all day long.
I saw Jean Smart, probably in 80, I don't know when. Very early on, I saw Jean Smart in, Last Summer at Bluefish Cove, which is a play that she did.
Play out here. It premiered out here.
Yes. And Jean was in that play.
At the Fountain, right?
Yeah, or the Odyssey?
Okay.
I don't remember what theater. Jean was in that play. And then, of course, she was there. But, I that show that she does, where she's the Las Vegas comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. Jean just is brilliant. And it's so wonderful to have seen the arc of her career. She's brilliant, as she always was. But, just watching it, it's incredible.
What about Scarecrow and Mrs. King, where we started our podcast with Kate Jackson and Bruce Boxleitner?
Oh, I know. Well, yeah, Bruce Boxleitner. He was in the first Tron, actually.
Yes, he was.
That's right.
Yeah, we passed him a little cameo when we did the second Tron, and Bruce was on the set. Yeah, no, Kate Jackson. It's now where are these people,
Yeah, yeah.
And Kate was great. She had a huge career.
Yeah. I think it's hard to have a career as an actress.
I think it's very hard. By the way, I think it's hard for anybody to have a career.
That's true.
To be a working actor and to be able to support yourself as an actor, there's so much rejection before you even have success. It's very difficult for people. I always tried as a casting director to have a very warm environment in my casting office. I'd go out to the lobby. I don't care how many people were sitting out there. I'd walk out there and say, "Hi, I'm Marcia Ross. Nice to meet you." I didn't care. And every person got that. And I would look at their resume and I would try to find something before we launched into the audition. And I would always try to be kind because it's such a hard business. And, somebody's coming in, they're reading for a 2-line part, right? Or 1 line, hey, that's all they're reading for, and they've got this audition and it's their one audition for the week or of the day. And, they've dressed up and they've put on makeup with they're showing up and they're in your office and they're waiting with all these people and they see, 20 other guys with the same side or whatever. You just want to make people feel like, even if they don't get the part, that their time was valuable too. I just believed in that. It's just a really hard profession. And it's hard to have longevity because people always want the next new thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about the changes in the business of casting since you started. I wonder if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Sure. Well, when I first started, you saw actors in LA and the agents had to come to your office and read the script.
Oh, so you didn't even send out the scripts to the agents?
No, you didn't. They had to come. Unless, I guess William Morris or something had them. But, there was William Morris and ICM. That's it, right? So people had to come pick up sides. And then the agents, they would make an appointment and they would come to the office and they'd pitch their client, whatever. Then Gary Marsh, who invented breakdown services, his mother was the agent Nora Sanders, and Gary would come and read the scripts. He came up with the idea of breakdown services because he would go to the offices on behalf of his mother. But he built that business. We didn't even have a computer. We didn't have a word processor. Everything was hand and typewriter. And then if you were casting for something really big and you'd go to New York when you were working on a film because you needed to see the actors. I went to New York a lot in those days because I needed to put people on tape, for Brewster's Millions and for Crossroads. It was Crossroads because the actors were in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Charles Dutton and Joe Seneca, who I cast in that film, I saw them in the play. So I went to New York for those things, and then my producers would come in, so you'd go. But then what started to happen is everybody goes on tape. Now, when you're a casting director, you're not just watching auditions from LA. When I did Kings and Prophets, I would read actors during the day, and then I was looking at audition tapes from India and Israel and England and Australia and New Zealand and Ireland and New York and Chicago and, anywhere there was an actor that spoke English. So now you're inundated with tremendous, when I look back at my earlier notebooks, like a Clueless notebook compared to like the notebooks at the end, when I was casting, they're like 4 times the size.
Wow.
Because there's just so many more actors and you can discover all kinds of people in other countries. Also, that's an expectation that you didn't miss that. And then, of course, everything's posted online and now everybody can get breakdown and everybody can put stuff, send you tapes, and everybody has your email address. So all of a sudden, in addition to making a request of an agent, I'll say, well, what about these people that you didn't ask for? So now they're submitting all, and you're getting all, the input for casting directors can be overwhelming.
Yeah, it makes sense because you can access things so much easier. And it's both beneficial because it's beneficial to the person that's not living in LA or New York.
Yes.
But it is challenging because it means so many more people are vying for the same part.
Right. Or you don't go, you
don't see in person anymore.
You don't see in person or like all the little parts. I remember I was working on a film called September Gun with Robert Preston, Jeffrey Lewis, Christopher Lloyd, Patty Duke Aston, Don Taylor, who was the actor when Father of the Bride, but he was the director. And I remember I had to go to Arizona, to some little town in Arizona, and see all these local actors so that Don could do that. Or when I did, Lone Wolf McQuaid, the Chuck Norris movie, and I went to El Paso. But you went to these towns, these little places, and you found actors. Now you just hire a local casting director. They just put the people on tape. And you watch them in your office. And then by the way, there's another thing. Because everything's on tape and everything's inputted now into these systems, everybody's watching them at every level. It's not just going to your boss, this executive and that executive. So many people, especially in television, all it takes is like one person not to like something out of like 8 people watching it because they all have access to it now. It makes it hard for casting directors.
My husband, Rich, has said the casting is way more people involved.
Oh, yeah.
And it used to be for smaller roles because we know a lot of actors, and he'd be like, oh, who would be great for this? Andrew Evans Miller. And then you'd go, hey, casting director, how about Andrew Evans Miller? And now he's like, because it has to go through so many chains, I kind of can't say that anymore.
No, because I always thought, well, we've hired a wonderful director. Why does that person just have who they want? Yes, believe me, I worked with plenty of producers and directors in feature films. They got who they wanted. There was never everybody looked, but there was never like, you can't have that person. So there is always that. But I think it's more in like TV these days. Just so many people have access and everybody's looking and, they just have so many, everybody's got, their fingerprints on everything, and it's all deferring up. It's a very political thing. And I feel for actors.
Yeah.
It's hard to do anything by committee. And I get the impulse on some level, but at the end of the day, I don't know how productive it truly is. You're hiring these people to make decisions about all sorts of things, casting and all sorts of other things. And maybe they should be more trusted to do it that way.
Well, I think with casting directors and their directors and producers, people have long relationships, and I think there is a great deal of trust. But in the end, particularly in television, you have to get approvals.
Yeah.
And so it's, you can have the greatest person, but sometimes if everybody can't agree, you have to settle on somebody that everyone can agree upon, unless it's a powerful director, then of course, not a big deal. But if you're somebody that's not, the big, then you have to play by their rules, and you can't always get your first choice. But it is hard. And then as time went on, people didn't even want to come to casting sessions anymore because they didn't want to say no to people. It's hard to meet people in a casting session and then not pick them, So it's easier to watch everything on tape, which, actors like to act for people.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So more and more casting sessions themselves are done by tape as opposed to having actors come in?
Yeah, because of COVID.
Yeah.
Well, but now that COVID is kind of...
People are starting to go back, but not so much because, you know what? People get used to things.
Yeah.
Everybody got used to watching everything on Zoom or being sent to tape and not having to organize their schedule around going to a casting session when they didn't have time. They're too busy on the set, right? Too many other things, writer's room, this thing, that thing, there's too much... going on. So it's just easier to send them all a tape and have them look at it. I mean,
and it's not even a tape. It's just send them a link.
It's a link. Yeah, everything's a link. That's right. It's a link. Yeah. I mean, it's just easier. So
it used to be a tape.
Something
right,
physical.
I mean, you had to edit the thing with the scenes. Believe me, you'd have to make a demo thing on an actor, and then you'd have to cut and splice and make the tape. It's crazy. And trying to get in my office at Disney when I was in the Frank Wells building, we had this tape room. Because it's been there for a long time. I inherited it from the previous people, before I got there. And, it was an incredible library of stuff. And then after a while, we didn't need it anymore because everything's online.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. All right. So where can people find out more about Marcia Ross if they want to? Nowhere. She's like, I don't want anybody.
No, you know what? You can find out about our films.
Yes.
We have a website, floatingworldpictures.com. You can go to Nazarene.com, our films, Every Act of Terrence McNally, Every Act of Life, The State of Marriage, Father Joseph, The Savoy King. You can find them all and all of them. And I really am so proud of this. I am very proud in the pivot of my career that all of our films have distribution. All of our films are available on multiple platforms. You can see all of them if you wish to.
That's fantastic.
And I'm very proud of that. And apparently for the rest of your life, you can see a lot of things like Cast because, I'll leave you the one thing that has really, really amazed me. Because, and you all know this because you work in the business, you work on stuff and then it's over and it's you can't get too attached because frankly, it's just a thing you did. And then all of a sudden, someone would come into my office, different ages, children, adults, certain people go, oh my God, The Princess Diaries, Romy and Michelle, 10 Things I Hate About You, Clueless. These films, whenever I think, well, my work doesn't mean anything to anybody at any time and never will again, somebody says to me, those movies, as if I watched them and I showed them to my kid. Or those were my movies when I was in high school. I mean, it really surprises me every single time. I mean, I'm very flattered. I'm very honored, but it totally surprises me.
I think that we have discovered in looking back at 80s television, how meaningful those shows are to people. They're meaningful because they watched them with their mom or they watched them with their daughter and they gave them joy. I think those are the things that we are looking for now a lot now. It's I think the rom-com is making a comeback after a long pause because it's nice.
Well, it's nice to have something you can watch with your kids.
Yeah.
And that speaks to you. I mean, I watch, with my daughter, I watch tons of things. Thank God because she was of the age. So we watched a lot of the Disney Channel, a lot of stuff on the channel that I might not have actually watched. And therefore, when we wanted to make, the Lizzie McGuire movie, or what does everybody think about Miley Cyrus, or this one or that one, it was oh yeah, I watched all that with my daughter. Yes. She got to meet all of these people, the Jonas Brothers, Demi Lovato, Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez. She met all of them when she was growing up.
Oh, that's
And at Disney, was it like, hey, come on, let's use our people that we've brought up?
It was encouraged.
Yeah.
You couldn't always, Dick, I remember, I don't know, was it with Dick or somebody? I don't remember. It was Dick, because he wanted to make the Lizzie McGuire movie, and everybody's like, a Lizzie McGuire movie? And he's like, and he asked me what I thought. I said, yeah, my daughter loves that show, and all her friends watched that show. That movie was successful.
It was.
We did a couple of movies besides the Miley concert movie. We did a couple of movies with Miley, and those were successful too.
Yeah, and that was the time when they made movies that didn't have to be made for, $200 million, and they could be made for, not as much, and then make a good amount, but not everything, right? Like it was, but they were doubles. They were solid doubles.
Yeah, doubles. Yeah, right. Not home runs. But now that's what they're doing for the streamer. All of this, I don't really know anymore what's actually being made for the theater. It's all, I guess Marvel, well, but they do a lot of Marvel television, but, a lot of it's just being made for the streamer.
But I have to say, having watched 10 Things I Hate About You, they're not made with the same kind of care. And I think it has to do with, I have a theory that it has to do with the physical, it's like, because everything can be CG, everything can just be done a little bit quicker and a little bit faster. 10 Things I Hate About You is very well shot, very well directed, a lovely script.
And they shot it on location. I went there, believe it or not. I took my daughter. We went to the high school in Tacoma. And we were there the day that Heath Ledger was doing the bit where he's singing down the steps down, and in the stadium, and we watched that. It was all done at the school. Yeah.
And there was something very, it's just really, every shot is interesting in that movie. And you're sort of like, I haven't seen something, maybe Booksmart was the last thing I saw that was made with, where it felt like every shot mattered. And I think I don't see that in all the streaming content. Now, some of it I'm sure is great.
Well, again, it's budgetary concerns too. Budget. Needing to produce so much content in such a short time. With the finances, what they are, people don't want to spend that kind of money. And also, we didn't make these movies for a lot of money relative to what Clueless was made for very low money. But, even 10 Things or some of these movies, they were not made for a lot of money. But that budget is not what people would do anymore, because it's either like something really big or something very tiny, but something in between where you cannot guarantee you will make it back in a theater. You just don't have it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that I've been feeling is we've been looking back at these television shows that, like Scarecrow and Mrs. King. They just had a 40th anniversary reunion where people came from literally all over the world to come to this thing. But because there's so much TV in particular, it's so fragmented, you don't have that commonality of what everybody is watching.
Oh, listen, I was at a birthday dinner on Friday night with pretty much, a couple of agents and 3 working casting directors and 2 retired casting directors, which always happens. And everybody starts talking about, what are you watching? What are you watching? And the disparity about what people are watching, like this group's on BritBox, and this, I like all these British mystery things, or I like everybody's watching different things. Mm-hmm. Nobody's I have that too. I try to still, we watch TV during COVID. I got much more back into watching TV, in the evenings, but like I did when I was growing up. But you'll watch there's a couple things that happen. You'll watch one episode or 2 and he's like, nah, I don't really like it. So you don't watch any more of it. Or you get really hooked on something like The Bear, and then in 3 nights you've watched all 10 episodes, and then you're really depressed because it's over. What am I going to do now? And then it's over.
Yeah.
And it is nice to have choice. I'm not saying, but the downside of that is we don't have the commonality of what everybody is watching.
Well, you have what they used to call appointment TV, because if you didn't, remember when we were growing up, I'm probably older than both of you, but when we were growing up and it was on at this time, at this hour, on this night, and if you missed it, That was it.
Right.
Maybe there was a rerun in the summer, but that was the only shot you ever had, to watch it. Now you can watch everything. And also the other thing was, water cooler television, where you'd come into work on whatever day the next day and everybody's like, oh, did you see that? And everybody be talking. Disney, of course, that was the way it was with movies. Every Monday when you go into Weekend Read, everybody's talking about what movie they saw that weekend. Now, nobody hardly has to go to a movie theater. They watch it on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
as I said, there are upsides and downsides to everything. And it is nice to have choice. But I do miss having the common language of whatever is out there in the culture to watch and listen to. Because everybody's in different places, whether they're watching things from the past or whether they're watching current things or catching up on something. Oh, you've only watched the first 2 episodes of this show. I'm on episode 10. We can't talk about it.
Right. Sometimes like if I don't know where I was in a hotel somewhere, when you're going through the channels and you're like, Sky King is on, or, Rawhide, or, some of these shows, that I watched growing up. I was a little, it was the 60s, the late 50s. The first television show I was ever allowed to watch was The Flintstones. And it was on Friday nights at 7:30. So I was allowed to stay up till 8 o'clock on Friday nights to watch The Flintstones. But then I watched a lot more television as I grew up. But Andy Griffith's Show, and all these shows that I watched, as a little kid all through high school, you can find them everywhere now.
Yes, you can find almost everything, but not everything, we have discovered.
Yes.
As we look at I think the sort of 70s, 80s is a little bit of a dip in streaming in that some things are totally available, but some things aren't.
What do you want to see that you haven't been able to find?
The 9 to 5 television show.
Oh, God, I remember that.
Yeah. Rita Moreno.
Right.
Produced by Jane Fonda for the first 2 seasons. Looks amazing. We've only been able to track down 1.5 episodes on in parts on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Which is weird.
Well, even Moonlighting has only just become available for streaming because of music rights primarily. They had to deal with all of that before they could make it available.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched the pilot recently. It was so strange to see it again after all these years.
So strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
Weirdly, in some ways, it held up better than I thought it was going to. We got to talk with Glenn Gordon Caron.
It's probably a fascinating casting story because, trying to cast Bruce Willis, that was really hard.
He was saying that...
You had to bring him in 11 times to the network.
Because I kept saying no. And he was like, there's nobody else to do it. They were going to cancel the show because they were like, we can't find this guy. Bill Murray's not going to do it. No one else can do it.
See, that's it.
But then I think he was like, I think they just said that to make me go away.
Well, right. And a lot of credit to him, that he fought for this actor, because he believed in him and he was right.
Yeah.
But, that's the problem, these people write the check, they pay for stuff. And therefore, they have a lot of opinions about what they think is their network and should be on their network. And you have to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, this has been so much fun.
We could talk forever, trust us.
I am so thrilled that Jeff put us together. You gave us so much great stuff, and it's been really fun to kind of.
It's nice to meet everybody here. I thought it would be fun.
In today's audiography, you can find out more about Marcia Ross and Jeff Kaufman's past and upcoming documentary projects at floatingworldpictures.com.
Go to NazrinFilm.com to find out how to watch Nazrin and to watch Every Act of Life about Terrence McNally. Go to Roku.com and it'll send you to various places, as Roku does. Thank you so much for joining us at 80s TV Ladies for this amazing interview with Marcia Ross. It's been such a treat and delight to have someone in studio, Sharon. That's been really special today. And I just want to shout out to all our Patreon supporters and thank you all for being so supportive of us and helping us make this show. If you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/80s TV Ladies.
As always, we hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch. all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.